One of the fastest growing trends among marketers is to step into the world of podcasts. Undoubtedly, podcasts have gained so much traction that it is pretty much the only thing people want to listen to. Based on a recent statistic, it was proven that nearly 37% of all Americans usually tune into podcasts every single month due to its widespread popularity and frequency. Did you know the different types of podcasts, which your audience wants to listen to? Well, this piece of write-up may give you a great insight into the ABCD of the podcasting. Podcasting, the beginning of your journey. Considering these high numbers, you might consider jumping on the bandwagon by creating a podcast of your own as well. But, before doing it, you should have a deeper understanding of the various types of podcasts, especially those you want to listen to. Suppose you're interested in starting your podcast. In that case, it is essential to know what you need to do before recording your first podcast, and the type of equipment you need to arrange to begin with recording your podcast successfully. You must know different podcasts to figure out which one will be the best choice for you. Importance of knowing various types of podcasts. The success rate of a podcast is dependent on the format of it. Therefore, it is fundamental to know the different types of podcasts to choose the most suitable podcast format that is the right choice for your brand. By choosing the right format for your brand, you will be taking the first step towards hosting a successful show. The well-established fact is that everyone will pay even more attention if you deliver useful, informative, and engaging content to them. Podcasts have taken the entire world by storm. Even statistics are also backing this statement that is given here. More than 75% of Americans are familiar with podcasts. At least 22% of all Americans listen to podcasts every week. Fans of podcasts listen to at least 7 different shows every single week. If your customers are listening to podcasts, then they're probably waiting eagerly for the launch of your brand as a whole. Let us check out the 3 types of podcasts that have gained the maximum amount of popularity and traction. Based on these 3 types of podcasts, you can choose the podcast suitable for your business's needs. The 3 most popular types of podcasts that your audience rarely wants to miss. Narrative storytelling podcast, solo podcast, co-hosted podcast. Let us take a closer look at each of these types of podcasts to gain a better understanding of them. After reading about the various types of podcasts, you will clearly understand the types of podcasts that an audience wants to listen to. Number 1. Narrative storytelling podcasts. A narrative storytelling podcast focuses on the stories of people, businesses, or brands. This type of storytelling podcast focuses on real-life events that might be interesting to listeners. Brands usually part of the interviews add music and sound effects to improve the storytelling by taking it to the next level. A narrative storytelling podcast is one of the 3 main types of podcasts that your audience wants to listen to. However, without the right kind of expertise and experience behind you, it can prove quite tricky to nail this type of podcast. To make this type of podcast work for you, you must have a vast team of professionals behind you. Make a narrative storytelling podcast requires essential audio elements such as phone conversations and interviews. The narrative storytelling podcast can prove to be quite engaging as you need to have more creativity while producing it. Your main job might be to find an exciting topic and think of the various ways to present it to your audience. If you genuinely do have an engaging story to tell your audience, then your listeners will be hooked within no time. Another great benefit is that you can add various audio elements, such as movie clips, news broadcasts, and other elements to enhance the overall experience. Finally, you can pick from an infinite number of stories you want to convey with your podcast by doing your research. Number 2. Solo podcasts. Solo podcasts are the most common types of podcasts in the marketing world, as they feature a host who tells stories or just comments about a particular subject. A person with considerable expertise who has experience usually shares these podcasts with others. Unlike other narrative podcasts, solo podcasts don't usually require a great deal of fanfare or setup. On the contrary, the only job is to talk into a microphone and share the knowledge. Many brands usually go ahead with this format as it is quite simple to produce. All a storyteller or narrator need is a microphone, editing software, and you can begin recording. Solo podcasts need to be entertaining and informative to listeners as they don't have any guests, but make up for compelling storytelling. The best advantage of solo podcasts is that you don't need to rely on anyone but yourself, as you set the pace and do things as you see fit. You will end up spending less time making the podcast format compared to the narrative storytelling format. It is also definitely more comfortable to edit a single voice rather than multiple tracks without focusing mainly on the sound elements. Solo podcasts are better for your audience to get to know you better, as they spend the whole show with you alone. If you're trying to create an intimate atmosphere and want your audience to think that they know you personally, solo podcasts are what you've been looking for. Number 3. Co-hosted podcast. The co-hosted podcast is a well-known format in marketing that involves two people who are readily engaged in discussing a particular matter. A vast majority of individuals are also hosts in the co-hosted podcast format. Each host usually has a pre-defined specific role during a conversation to ensure that the show is engaging. Usually, one of the hosts might teach a lesson, while the other might connect it with their own experience. Another example could be that one host would read the news while the other provides commentary. The hosts can then decide to invite a guest and also interview them about a particular specific topic. Wrapping up. As mentioned earlier, the 3 types of podcasts are the most popular podcasts utilized every day. It is vital to pay close attention while choosing the correct type of podcast that you want to create with your brand, as your format's choice will have the most significant impact on your show. The type of podcast that you will create has to cater to the choice of your target audience. Ultimately, the type of podcast that you end up creating will dictate everything from the content you create to the guests you invite. The most important thing to consider is what type of podcast you're the most comfortable creating, and ultimately take the entire podcast world by storm. Please subscribe to our channel, like and comment, hit the bell so you know when we upload new videos. ONPASSIVE Bill Must.